When your physical therapist looks at you with pity that goes beyond your injuries, you know something isn't right. It's that look people give when they know a secret about your life that you haven't discovered yet. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is James Miller. I'm a 37-year-old software developer for MedTech Solutions here in Minneapolis, where I've been building healthcare applications for the past 11 years. Not the most exciting job to most people, but it challenged my mind and provided the stability I thought we both wanted. The we being myself and my wife of 8 years, Olivia. We met during my last year of grad school when she was waitressing at a local café near campus. I was immediately drawn to her confidence, her ambitious plans for interior design school, and that smile that made me believe I was the only person in the room. After dating for 2 years, we married in a small ceremony by Lake Harriet, surrounded by close friends and immediate family. My brother Marcus flew in from Seattle, somewhat skeptical about the speed of our relationship, but supportive nonetheless. We purchased our house in Maple Grove 3 years ago, a 3-bedroom craftsman with a finished basement that I converted into a home office. The neighborhood was quiet, family-oriented, with good schools nearby for the children we planned to have. Olivia took charge of decorating, transforming each room with her designer's eye while I handled the technical upgrades. The smart home system was my domain. Programmable thermostats, automated lighting, and a comprehensive security setup with cameras covering every entry point, motion sensors, and remote access capabilities. "You're turning our home into a surveillance state," Olivia had joked when I installed the final cameras last winter after a series of break-ins 2 blocks over. "Just protecting what matters most," I'd replied, showing her how to access the system through the smartphone app. She'd rolled her eyes, but seemed appreciative of the peace of mind. At least, that's what I thought at the time. The accident happened on a company ski trip to Lutsen Mountains last February. A patch of black ice, a failed turn, and my left leg twisted in ways human anatomy doesn't allow. The initial diagnosis seemed straightforward, a complex tibial fracture requiring surgery and several weeks of recovery. Painful, but manageable. I remember Olivia's concern in those first days, her meticulous note-taking during doctor consultations, her hands squeezing mine before they wheeled me into surgery. What no one anticipated was the infection that took hold a week after the procedure. Methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, MRSA, turning a standard recovery into something much more dangerous. My temperature soared to 104, the surgical site became inflamed, and suddenly terms like septicemia and intravenous antibiotic regimen entered our vocabulary. My anticipated 5-day hospital stay stretched into 3 weeks of intensive treatment. The first week, Olivia was attentive, bringing fresh clothes, handling insurance paperwork, keeping our families updated. By the second week, her visits grew shorter, her excuses more frequent. Work deadlines, a burst pipe at home requiring contractor supervision, a design client with an emergency project. "You need to focus on getting better," she insisted when I asked about the pipe repair details. "I'll handle everything else." From my hospital bed, I tried to stay connected to our home life through texts and brief video calls. Olivia always seemed to be in motion during these conversations, walking between rooms, adjusting lighting, never quite settling in one place long enough for me to see the background clearly. When I asked to see how the plumbing repairs were progressing, she quickly shifted the camera back to her face. "It's all just a mess right now," she explained. "Contractors everywhere. Parts of the floor torn up. You don't need to see that while you're healing." It was Derek, my physical therapist, who inadvertently planted the first real seed of doubt. During our 3rd session, as he helped me build strength in my recovering leg, he mentioned seeing Olivia at Lakeside Mall the previous evening. "Your wife was with some tall guy at the furniture store," he said casually. "Buying a new couch, I think. Seemed pretty intense about the whole selection process." I nodded, saying something about our living room renovation plans, but inside, confusion spread. We hadn't discussed buying new furniture. Our living room set was barely 2 years old, a grey sectional Olivia had specifically selected from a designer showroom. And who was this tall guy? That night, after a particularly brief call with Olivia, where she claimed to be exhausted from dealing with everything alone, I lay awake in my hospital bed, the ceiling tiles offering no answers to my growing questions. I remembered the security system app on my phone, untouched since my accident. With a growing sense of unease, I opened it and logged in. The interface loaded, showing multiple camera feeds from around our home. Dozens of unviewed motion alerts accumulated over the past weeks. I tapped on the most recent one from earlier that evening, the front entryway camera. The footage loaded, showing Olivia entering our home. She wasn't alone. A tall man I'd never seen before followed closely behind her, his hand resting comfortably on the small of her back. They paused in the entryway, and he kissed her. Not a friendly peck, but with the familiarity of established intimacy. She laughed at something he said, then took his hand, leading him upstairs toward our bedroom. My thumb hovered over the screen, trembling slightly. I could stop watching now, preserve some fragment of deniability. Instead, I tapped the kitchen camera feed, scrolling back to earlier that same day. There they were again, Olivia and this stranger, moving around our kitchen with the choreographed ease of people accustomed to sharing the space. He opened cabinets without hesitation, knowing exactly where glasses were kept. She leaned against him while stirring something on the stove. They looked comfortable, established, at home. I scrolled backward through days of footage, watching a story unfold in reverse. The man, whom I heard Olivia call Ethan during a phone conversation captured by the living room camera, had apparently been staying in our home for at least 10 days. I watched them sharing meals at our dining table, watching movies on our couch, entering and leaving the house together with matching routines. In one clip, he carried in a large duffel bag and several hanging garment bags. In another, they rearranged the furniture in my office, pushing my desk against the wall to make room for what appeared to be a drafting table. Most revealing was footage from 5 days earlier. Olivia and Ethan in our living room, discussing fabric swatches spread across the coffee table while looking at something on a laptop. "James will never go for this color scheme," Olivia said, holding up a blue-gray sample. Ethan's response was clear through the camera's microphone. "James doesn't need to go for it. By the time he's out of the hospital, we can have this place completely transformed. Better to ask forgiveness than permission, right? Besides, you said yourself, he barely notices the design elements anyway." Olivia laughed, leaning against him. "True, he only cares about his tech toys and security gadgets." She gestured vaguely toward the camera without looking at it. "Case in point." "Has he even checked those since being hospitalized?" Ethan asked. "Not once," Olivia replied confidently. "He's too drugged up and focused on recovery. By the time he's home, we'll have established our new normal." I switched off my phone, the screen going black as my mind raced. Our new normal. The phrase echoed in my thoughts as the full weight of the situation settled over me. While I fought infection and pain, my wife had moved her boyfriend into our home. They were redesigning our space, establishing routines, planning for a future that somehow included me returning to a home they had claimed as theirs. My night nurse, Hannah, found me attempting to disconnect my IV around midnight. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Whoa there, Mr. Miller, where do you think you're going?" she asked, gently but firmly, stopping my fumbling fingers. "Home," I said, my voice hoarse. "I need to go home right now." She checked my temperature, concerned I might be delirious from infection. You're still on a critical antibiotic regimen. Leaving now could set your recovery back weeks, maybe months. I showed her my phone, the security footage still captured in paused frames. My wife has moved another man into our house while I've been here, I explained, the words sounding surreal as I spoke them. They're redecorating, rearranging my things. I need to go home. Hannah's professional demeanor softened into genuine sympathy. I'm so sorry, Mr. Miller, that's awful. She paused, then added pragmatically, but getting sicker won't help you deal with this situation. She was right, of course. In my weakened state, confronting Olivia and her boyfriend would accomplish nothing except potentially landing me back in the hospital with a worse prognosis. I needed to think strategically, not emotionally. Is there someone you can call? Hannah suggested. Family or a friend who could check on things? My brother Marcus immediately came to mind. Though he lived in Seattle, we'd always been close. More importantly, he was a corporate attorney with a tactical mind and unflinching loyalty. If anyone could help me navigate this situation while I was physically compromised, it was him. I checked the time. Just after midnight in Minneapolis meant it was still evening in Seattle. I texted him, "Need to talk. Emergency but not health-related. Can you call when you get this?" Marcus called 3 minutes later. "What's going on? Are you okay?" I explained the situation as concisely as possible, directing him to specific timestamps in the security footage he could access through the shared family account I'd set up months ago. His initial shock gave way to methodical questioning. Who was this man? How long had this been happening? What financial accounts did Olivia have access to? Had there been any unusual spending? His lawyer's mind immediately grasped potential. Vulnerabilities beyond the obvious emotional betrayal. "I'll be on the first flight tomorrow," he said finally. "In the meantime, don't confront her yet. Don't let her know you're aware of anything. We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with before making any moves." After hanging up with Marcus, I lay in the darkness of my hospital room, the occasional beep of medical equipment punctuating my thoughts. I'd installed that security system to protect our home from external threats. Never once had I imagined it would reveal an inside job, the dismantling of our marriage from within the very walls I thought sheltered it. The next morning, Olivia texted that she couldn't visit because she was meeting with the contractor about the plumbing issue. I replied with deliberate casualness, suggesting a video call later instead. She agreed, seeming relieved at my understanding. During that video call, I maintained the facade of the oblivious, recovering husband. I asked about her day, mentioned my improving prognosis, discussed mundane details about mail and bills, all while noticing how she angled the camera to show only her face and a blank wall behind her, how she flinched slightly when a muffled sound came from somewhere off-screen, how her eyes occasionally darted to someone, beyond my view. "The doctors think I might be able to come home next week," I said, watching her expression carefully. A flicker of panic crossed her features before she composed herself. That's wonderful news, James. But are you sure that's not rushing things? You know how cautious Dr. Patel is about infections." "I'm responding well to the antibiotics," I replied. "But you're right, we shouldn't rush it." Her relief was palpable. "Exactly. Your health comes first. Everything else can wait." Everything else, like addressing why a stranger was living in our home, sleeping in our bed, helping redesign our space. Marcus arrived the following afternoon, coming directly to the hospital from the airport. In person, he reviewed the security footage I'd flagged, his expression darkening with each new clip. "This goes beyond an affair, James," he said finally. "They're living as if the house is already theirs. Have you checked your accounts?" I hadn't, focusing solely on the emotional betrayal rather than potential financial impropriety. Together, we logged into my banking portal. Several large transactions stood out immediately. $12,000 to a furniture store, $8,500 to a contractor I'd never hired, $4,200 to an interior design showroom. All from the joint account Olivia and I shared. She's spending your money to create their home, Marcus said quietly, while you're literally fighting infection in the hospital. The methodical nature of it struck me harder than any emotional aspect. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment affair. This was calculated, planned, executed with precision, while I was physically unable to intervene. "What do I do?" I asked, feeling more helpless than I had since waking up with MRSA. Marcus closed my laptop. "First, we protect your assets. Then, we document everything. And then, when you're medically cleared, we confront them on your terms, not theirs." Over the next 5 days, with Marcus acting as my proxy, we executed a careful plan. New accounts were created, accessible only to me. Automatic transfers from my paycheck were redirected. Credit cards were frozen under the guise of potential fraud alerts. A consultation with a family law attorney, Alexandra Chen, a former colleague of Marcus's, gave us clarity on my legal position regarding the home, shared assets, and Olivia's unauthorized spending. All while I continued improving physically, focusing on therapy sessions with Derek, who now understood why I pushed myself so hard in each session. All while Olivia continued her charade of the devoted wife managing our home alone, unaware that every movement she and Ethan made was being monitored, documented, and built into the case we were quietly constructing. My infection finally cleared. My strength returned incrementally, and 7 days after discovering Olivia's betrayal, Dr. Patel signed my discharge papers. "You've made remarkable progress," she said, reviewing my latest lab results, "but you'll need to continue antibiotics at home for another 2 weeks, and physical therapy for at least 2 months. I nodded, thanking her sincerely for the care that had likely saved my leg, possibly my life. What I didn't say was that the physical healing, challenging as it had been, now seemed like the simplest part of my recovery. Marcus drove me home. From the hospital. In the passenger seat, I watched familiar streets pass by, leading to a house that no longer felt like mine. "Remember the plan," Marcus said as we turned onto our street. "We document first. We stay calm. We control the narrative." I nodded, grip tightening on the cane I still needed for stability. "They don't know I've seen anything." "They don't. And no, you know," he confirmed. "That's our advantage." We pulled into the driveway behind Olivia's car. No sign of another vehicle, but the security app on my phone showed motion in the kitchen just 5 minutes earlier. Both Olivia and Ethan, preparing for my homecoming, unaware of exactly what that would entail. I paused at our front door, the weight of what waited inside momentarily overwhelming. Then I straightened as much as my recovering body allowed, nodded to Marcus, and opened the door to the home that had been invaded in my absence. The entryway looked different immediately. New console table, artwork I'd never seen, a runner that replaced the one we'd picked together years ago. But more jarring was Olivia's expression when she saw Marcus behind me. Momentary confusion giving way to poorly concealed panic. "Marcus, what a surprise," she said, her voice pitched slightly higher than normal. "I didn't know you were coming." "Last-minute decision," he replied casually. "Wanted to help James transition home. Family's important, especially in medical situations." Her eyes darted toward the kitchen, then back to us. "Of course, that's wonderful. I was just making some welcome home lunch." I leaned on my cane, taking in more changes. The living room, visible beyond the entryway, now featured a completely different furniture arrangement, with an unfamiliar sectional and coffee table replacing our previous set. "You've been busy," I observed neutrally. "Place looks different." Olivia's smile tightened. "Just a few updates. I wanted to make things more comfortable for your recovery." From the kitchen came the unmistakable sound of a cabinet closing. Olivia's eyes widened slightly. "Is someone else here?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Oh, that's..." "That's just Ethan," she said, the name falling from her lips before she could reconsider. "He's a design colleague who's been helping with some of the updates, very generous with his time while you were hospitalized." I nodded as if this explanation made perfect sense. "I'd like to meet him, thank him personally." The look of panic that flashed across her face was almost worth the entire ordeal. Almost. "Ethan," she called, her voice strained. "Could you come meet James? He's home from the hospital." The man who emerged from our kitchen was exactly as I'd seen in the security footage. Tall, conventionally handsome in that catalogue model way, wearing a casual confidence that faltered only slightly when he saw Marcus standing beside me. He wore jeans and a Henley that I recognized from my own closet. "James, great to finally meet you," he said, extending his hand as if this were a normal business introduction. "Olivia's told me so much about you." I shook his hand with deliberate firmness, meeting his gaze directly. "Funny, she's told me nothing about you." An uncomfortable silence fell. Marcus stepped forward, seamlessly playing his role. "I need to bring in James's bags and medication from the car. Olivia, could you help me?" It was a transparent attempt to separate them, but Olivia couldn't refuse without seeming uncooperative. As they stepped outside, I was left alone with Ethan in the entryway of my own home. "Nice shirt," I said calmly. "Calvin Klein, right? I have one just like it." His hand instinctively went to the collar. "Oh, yeah, good brand." I leaned my cane against the wall, making sure I had stable footing. "Actually, it's not just like it. It is mine. From my closet, along with those Bose headphones on the console table that I got for Christmas, and presumably the side of my bed you've been sleeping on." The confidence drained from his face, replaced by the cornered look of someone whose script has been abandoned. "Look, man, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I interrupted, taking out my phone and pulling up the security app. I turned the screen toward him, showing a compilation of footage, him entering our house with luggage, sleeping in our bed, kissing Olivia in the kitchen, working together to rearrange furniture. "The cameras you two so confidently ignored have been recording everything for weeks." The color drained from his face. "Olivia said you never checked them, that you—" "Clearly she was wrong," I said simply. The front door opened as Marcus and Olivia returned, her expression shifting from confusion to horror as she saw the security footage playing on my phone screen in Ethan's view. "What is this?" she demanded, trying to regain control of a situation rapidly spinning beyond her. "Grasp. Documentation," Marcus answered professionally, "of unauthorized occupancy, misappropriation of funds, and what any reasonable person would consider a breach of marital trust." "You've been spying on me." Olivia's voice rose, attempting to shift blame. "It's not spying when it's my own home. With cameras I installed that you knew about," I replied calmly. "What would you call moving your boyfriend in while I was hospitalized? How would you describe spending over $24,000 of our money redesigning our home to your preferences without my knowledge or consent?" Ethan took a step back, looking from Olivia to me. "You said the money was yours, that you had separate accounts." Olivia shot him a silencing glare, but the damage was done. "I see," I said. "So there are things you've been dishonest about with both of us." What followed was less a confrontation than a methodical dismantling of their narrative. Marcus produced the financial records showing the unauthorized expenditures. I played selected clips from the security footage displaying their most damning conversations. Alexandra Chen, the family law attorney, arrived 30 minutes into this process, introducing another level of formality to what Olivia had clearly hoped would be a manipulable emotional situation. "This is still my house too," Olivia finally said, defiance replacing her initial shock. "I'm entitled to live here, to make changes." "Legally, you're half right," Alexandra replied professionally. "Your name is indeed on the deed. However, courts take a particularly dim view of spouses who move romantic partners into the marital home without consent, especially while the other spouse is hospitalized. The expenditures from joint accounts for these unauthorized renovations would likely be counted against your share in any financial settlement. "Are you threatening me?" Olivia demanded. "No," I said quietly. "We're informing you of reality, which is something you've been avoiding for some time now." In the end, the resolution was anticlimactic compared to the betrayal that preceded it. Ethan, recognizing the legal quicksand he'd wandered into, packed his things, carefully separating his belongings from mine under Marcus's watchful eye. Olivia, alternating between tearful pleas and cold accusations, eventually agreed to stay with a friend while we negotiated separation terms through our attorneys. As they prepared to leave, I had a final moment alone with Olivia in the kitchen, the space where we'd shared thousands of meals, planned our future, built what I thought was an unshakable foundation. "Why?" I asked simply. "If you were unhappy, why not just tell me?" She looked around at the half-transformed kitchen, at the renovation she'd never get to complete. "You were always so certain about everything, so fixed. The house had to be in this neighborhood. The security system had to cover every inch, every decision so carefully considered." She shook her head. "With Ethan, I could reimagine things, create something new. You could have discussed changes with me," I pointed out. "I'm not unreasonable." "Aren't you?" she challenged. "When have you ever embraced spontaneity? When have you ever let go of control?" The irony wasn't lost on me. The very security system that represented my need for control had ultimately revealed how little control I actually had. After they left, Marcus, Alexandra, and I sat at the kitchen table outlining next steps, financial separations, legal filings, property considerations, the practical architecture of dismantling a marriage. When they finally left as well, I sat alone in my altered home, surrounded by half-finished changes to a life I'd thought was stable. The security app notification chimed, motion detected, at the front door. I watched Marcus getting into his car, leaving me truly alone for the first time since my discovery. I moved through each room, cataloging the changes, using my cane for support as I navigated unfamiliar furniture arrangements. In our bedroom, my bedroom now, I found one of Olivia's earrings on the nightstand. A small, overlooked detail in their hasty departure. I placed it in a drawer, then opened the security app one last time that evening. Not to review past footage, but to adjust the settings. I added new recognition parameters, updated access protocols, refined alert conditions, not out of paranoia, but clarity. The system that had revealed betrayal could now protect recovery. My recovery of my home, my finances, and eventually my trust. 3 months later, after intensive physical therapy, I no longer needed the cane. The divorce proceedings continued with the mechanical precision that legal processes demand. Olivia and I communicated only through attorneys. I heard through mutual friends that she and Ethan had gotten an apartment together across town, that she'd launched her own interior design business, that they seemed happy. I sold the sectional they'd bought with my money and replaced it with a single comfortable chair and a side table, a simplicity that suited my newly streamlined life. The house gradually transformed again, this time reflecting my choices, my needs, my vision for the future. The security cameras remained, though their purpose had evolved. Less about monitoring threats, more about documenting healing. They captured Marcus visiting regularly from Seattle. They recorded the slow parade of friends who came by as the news of my divorce circulated. They witnessed the first dinner party I hosted, a small gathering of colleagues and neighbors in a home that felt increasingly mine again. One evening, as I reviewed the week's security footage, now more habit than necessity, I noticed something I'd missed in real time. Derek, my former physical therapist, who'd become a friend through the recovery process, looking directly at one of the living room cameras while waiting for me to return from the kitchen. Unlike Olivia and Ethan, who had studiously ignored them, Derek acknowledged the camera with a small wave and genuine smile. That simple gesture of acknowledgement, of seeing and being seen without deception, struck me as the difference between my past and whatever future waited ahead. The security system hadn't failed me. It had revealed an essential truth that would have remained hidden otherwise. I saved that clip, not as evidence, but as a milestone. Then I closed the app and joined a video call with Marcus to discuss the mountain biking trip we were planning for the summer, my first since recovery. The cameras continued their silent vigil, but I checked them less frequently as the months passed. They were there if needed, but no longer the first screen I opened each morning. Some forms of security I'd learned can't be installed or programmed. They must be built through choices, boundaries, and the courage to see clearly, even when the view is painful. The system that was meant to keep threats out had instead revealed the threat already inside, and in doing so, had protected something more valuable than the house itself, my capacity to trust my own perceptions, to recognize reality, however uncomfortable, to rebuild on foundations of truth rather than comforting illusions. When people ask about the cameras still visible, in my home I have a simple answer. They remind me to keep my eyes open. Because sometimes the most important security system isn't the one mounted on your walls. It's the one that helps you see clearly when it would be easier to look away. The morning after the confrontation, I woke up in a house that no longer felt like home. Every room contained evidence of Olivia and Ethan's redesign efforts, half-completed projects, unfamiliar furniture, paint swatches taped to walls. Even with them gone, their presence lingered in every changed detail. I lay in bed longer than necessary, cataloguing the ceiling cracks I'd always meant to repair, finding strange comfort in these familiar imperfections that had survived their makeover attempt. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Meeting with Alexandra at 10. I'll pick you up at 9:30. Always the efficient one, my brother had already scheduled the next strategic step while I was still processing the emotional aftermath. I showered, carefully, still mindful of my healing leg, noting the unfamiliar shampoo bottles and loofah that had replaced mine. In the kitchen I found coffee but no familiar mugs. They'd been replaced with minimalist ceramics in muted tones I'd never have chosen. Small dislocations that added to my growing sense of displacement. Scrolling through my security app out of habit, I watched Olivia and Ethan's hasty departure from the previous evening from multiple camera angles. Their expressions shifted from defiance to defeat as they carried out boxes and bags under Marcus's impassive supervision. In the driveway footage, I noticed something I'd missed in real time. As Ethan loaded his car, Olivia stood apart, arms crossed, looking back at the house with an expression that wasn't anger or shame, but something closer to regret. I closed the app, reminding myself that interpreting her emotions wasn't my responsibility anymore. Whatever regret she felt, if that's what it was, came too late. Marcus arrived precisely on time, businesslike in his approach to my shattered life. "Did you sleep?" he asked, helping me navigate the front steps with my cane. "Enough," I lied. The truth was, I'd spent most of the night reviewing security footage from the past 3 weeks, reconstructing the timeline of betrayal in excruciating detail. I'd watched Ethan's arrival with his first duffel bag 16 days earlier, witnessed their first dinner together at my dining table 14 days ago, catalogued the delivery of new furniture, the consultation with contractors, the steady erasure of my presence from my own home, all while I fought infection in a hospital bed across town. "We need to stay focused," Marcus said as we drove toward downtown Minneapolis. "Alexandra has drafted temporary separation papers. The sooner we establish legal boundaries, the better." I nodded, watching familiar streets pass by. The city looked unchanged. Coffee shops still serving morning customers, office workers hurrying along sidewalks, construction projects continuing their gradual progress. The world hadn't paused for my personal catastrophe. Alexandra Chen's office occupied the 15th floor of a glass-fronted building overlooking the Mississippi River. Her reception area projected exactly the impression you'd want from a high-caliber divorce attorney. Tasteful art, comfortable but not ostentatious furnishings, an atmosphere of discreet competence. Alexandra herself matched this aesthetic. Mid-40s, impeccably dressed, with the focused intensity of someone who excelled at navigating conflict. She greeted us with professional warmth, offering coffee before leading us to a conference room where documents already awaited. "Before we begin," she said once we were seated, "I want to confirm what you're seeking, James. Are you certain divorce is your preferred outcome? Some clients in similar situations eventually pursue reconciliation." The question caught me off guard. In the whirlwind of discovery and confrontation, I'd been operating on automatic, following Marcus's lead, focusing on immediate next steps rather than the final destination. "I don't see how reconciliation would be possible," I said finally. "The trust is completely broken." Alexandra nodded, neither approving nor disapproving. "I ask because it shapes our strategy. If there's any possibility of reconciliation, we approach things differently than if we're certain about divorce." I thought about Olivia's face on the security footage, looking back at our house. About 8 years of shared history before this. Betrayal. About the complete rewriting of those years that her actions forced me to undertake. "No," I said with more certainty. "I want a divorce." "In that case," Alexandra continued, "we should discuss immediate concerns. Your shared finances, temporary living arrangements, communication protocols. Minnesota is an equitable distribution state, which means marital assets will be divided fairly, though not necessarily equally." What followed was a detailed discussion of practical matters, accounts to freeze, credit cards to cancel, legal notices to prepare. The bureaucracy of unraveling a marriage felt surreal in its ordinariness. Forms to complete, boxes to check, signatures required, as if the end of what I'd thought was a lifetime commitment could be processed with the same paperwork as a car registration. "What about the house?" I asked eventually. "That's more complicated," Alexandra admitted. "Since you both own it, neither can force the other to leave permanently without a court order. The temporary separation agreement we're proposing gives you exclusive use of the residence for now, citing your medical recovery and her voluntary departure. Long-term, you have several options: buying out her share, selling and dividing proceeds, or other arrangements." "I want to keep it," I said, surprising myself with the immediacy of my response. Despite the painful associations now attached to every room, the thought of losing the house felt like another amputation. Alexandra nodded. "We can work toward that outcome." Now about the financial expenditures she made without your knowledge. We have documented over $30,000 in questionable spending. "30,000?" I repeated, the figure higher than my initial estimate. "Based on the bank records Marcus provided," she confirmed. "Furniture, contractors, design services, plus several large cash withdrawals. We'll argue these should be counted against her share of marital assets in the final settlement." The conversation continued, moving through property division, retirement accounts, tax implications, the granular details of dismantling a shared life. I answered questions mechanically, signed preliminary papers where indicated, trying to stay engaged while feeling increasingly detached from the process. By the time we finished, early afternoon sun streamed through Alexandra's office windows, casting sharp-edged rectangles across the conference table. My leg throbbed from sitting too long in one position. "One more thing," Alexandra said as we prepared to leave. "Olivia's attorney contacted me this morning. She's requesting a meeting with you, in person, without lawyers present." Marcus immediately shook his head. "Absolutely not. Everything goes through counsel now." "That would be my professional recommendation as well," Alexandra agreed. "But it's James's decision." They both looked at me, waiting. The strategic move was clear: maintain distance, control the narrative through legal channels, avoid emotional complications. Yet something in me hesitated. "What reason did she give for wanting to meet?" I asked. "She didn't specify," Alexandra replied. "Only that it was personal, not legal in nature." Personal, as if anything between us could be simply personal. Now untangled from the legal machinery we'd set in motion. "I'll think about it," I said finally. Marcus drove me home in disapproving silence. He'd always been the protective older brother, even with only 2 years between us. When neighborhood kids had bullied me in elementary school, it was Marcus who had taught me to stand up for myself, not by fighting, but by strategic thinking, by identifying leverage, by never showing weakness during negotiations. "She's trying to manipulate you," he said as we pulled into my driveway. "Any direct contact benefits her, not you." "Probably," I agreed, looking at our house, my house now. "But ignoring her request also tells her something about me, that I'm afraid of facing her without lawyers present, that I doubt my ability to maintain boundaries." Marcus sighed. "It's not about fear or doubt, it's about smart strategy." "Maybe I need something beyond strategy right now," I said quietly. "Some kind of closure that paperwork can't provide." He didn't argue further, but his concern was evident as he helped me into the house, made sure I had everything I needed before returning to his hotel. After he left, I sat in the unfamiliar living room, surrounded by half-completed changes, weighing my options. I opened my phone and texted Olivia directly for the first time since the confrontation. "Alexandra mentioned you want to meet. When and where?" Her response came quickly. "Tomorrow, coffee shop on Hennepin at 2 p.m. Thank you for considering this." I didn't reply immediately, uncertain whether agreeing was wisdom or weakness. The security app notification interrupted my thoughts. Motion detected at the front door. I checked the feed to see a delivery person leaving a large envelope. Forcing myself to use the cane properly rather than hurrying, I retrieved it. Legal. Documents from Alexandra requiring my review and signature. Reality crystallized in that moment. Whatever closure I sought wouldn't come from one conversation in a coffee shop. Perhaps it wouldn't come at all, but avoiding the conversation guaranteed I'd never know. I texted back, "Tomorrow at 2:45 minutes maximum." Her reply was immediate. "Understood, thank you." That night, I did something I hadn't anticipated. I began removing Olivia's changes to the house. Not all at once, not in a destructive rage, but methodically. I started in the kitchen, replacing the minimalist ceramics with my old mugs, retrieved from boxes they'd stacked in the basement. I moved their modern bar stools back to the garage, returning the comfortable chairs I'd always preferred. Small reclamations of space that felt therapeutic in their mundanity. The security cameras recorded my slow circuit through the house, leaning on my cane while gradually erasing their alterations. In the living room, I removed a large abstract canvas. They'd hung, replacing it with the landscape photography I'd collected over years. In the office, I shifted the desk back to its original position by the window, where natural light had always made working more pleasant. By midnight, exhausted but satisfied, I'd restored some sense of familiarity to key areas. Not returning to the past, That was impossible, but creating a modified present that acknowledged both continuity and rupture. A space that was neither the home Olivia and I had shared, nor the redesigned vision she and Ethan had begun implementing, but something new that belonged only to me. I slept better that night, despite anticipation about tomorrow's meeting. In the morning, I continued my reclamation project, focusing on the master bathroom. Their expensive toiletries went into a box for eventual return. My old shower curtain replaced the designer version they'd installed. Small, control-regaining actions that helped center me for the conversation ahead. The coffee shop on Hennepin Avenue was busy with early afternoon customers when I arrived, deliberately 10 minutes early to secure a table in the back corner where we'd have privacy without isolation. I positioned myself facing the door, and instinctive choice that gave me the small advantage of watching Olivia enter rather than being observed first. She arrived exactly at 2, scanning the room before spotting me, even prepared. The physical impact of seeing her was jarring. This person I'd shared a bed with for 8 years, whose body I knew better than my own, now carrying herself like a careful stranger. She wore a simple blue dress I didn't recognize, her hair pulled back in a way she knew I'd always liked. A calculated choice? Possibly. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she said, setting her purse on the empty chair between us, a physical buffer I noted without comment. 45 minutes, I reminded her, gesturing toward my watch. "What did you want to discuss?" She hesitated, seeming thrown by my directness. "Would you like coffee first? I can get you—" "I have one," I indicated my mug. "Please get to the point, Olivia." She nodded, composing herself. "I wanted to explain, not to justify what happened with Ethan, but to help you understand how things evolved." "Evolved," I repeated, the euphemism almost laughable in its inadequacy, like a natural process, completely beyond human control. "That's not what I meant," she said quickly. "I take full responsibility for my choices, but none of this happened the way you probably think it did." I leaned back, maintaining eye contact. "Tell me how it happened then." She took a deep breath. "Ethan and I met through a design workshop 6 months ago. It was professional at first, collaborating on projects, referring clients to each other. When you had your accident, he offered to help with some house projects I'd been wanting to tackle, just as a friend, initially." "Initially," I echoed, the timeline already contradicting what I'd pieced together from security footage. "Yes," she continued. "The first time he came over was just to help move furniture so I could clean behind it, things I couldn't manage alone with you in the hospital. But then we started talking about design possibilities, changes that would make the space more functional, more expressive." "Expressive of what?" I asked, genuinely curious despite myself. She gestured vaguely. "Of creativity, personality, life. Your approach to our home was always so pragmatic. Security, efficiency, functionality, everything in its proper place." There was truth in this I couldn't deny. I'd always prioritized practical considerations over aesthetic ones, sometimes dismissing her design suggestions as unnecessary or extravagant. So my hospitalization became an opportunity, I observed, to implement changes I'd previously rejected. "That's not," she began, then stopped herself. "Actually, yes, in part. I convinced myself you'd appreciate the improvements once you saw them completed. That showing initiative would impress you." "And moving him into our bedroom? Was that meant to impress me too?" Her composure cracked slightly. "That wasn't planned. After 2 weeks of working together on the house, our relationship shifted. I didn't intend for it to happen." "But you didn't stop it," I noted. "Instead, you accelerated it, spent our money on redesigning our home to suit your new relationship, all while pretending to be the devoted wife during hospital visits." "I was devoted," she insisted, leaning forward. I tracked your medications, coordinated with doctors, handled insurance paperwork. I was there every day at first. Until... You weren't, I said quietly, until other priorities emerged. She didn't immediately respond, finally acknowledging the indefensible nature of her choices. Around us, the coffee shop hummed with normal activity, students typing on laptops, friends catching up, baristas calling out completed orders. The mundane backdrop to our extraordinary conversation. I made terrible decisions, she admitted eventually. I betrayed your trust during your most vulnerable time. There's no excuse that justifies that. Her frankness surprised me. I'd expected more deflection, more attempts to distribute blame. Why did you want this meeting? I asked directly. What are you hoping to achieve? Honestly, she met my eyes. I don't know exactly. Partial absolution, maybe, or just a chance to face you directly without lawyers translating everything into clinical terms. I considered this. I'm proceeding with the divorce, Olivia. If you're hoping to change that outcome, you should know it's not negotiable. I understand, she said, looking down briefly. I'm not contesting anything. You'll have the settlement offer from my attorney by tomorrow. I'm not asking for the house or for anything beyond what's legally mine. I'll repay the money I spent without your consent. Again, not what I'd expected. Marcus and Alexandra had prepared me for a contentious process, for attempts to claim half of everything despite her betrayal. Why? I asked, genuinely confused by her acquiescence. Because fighting would just cause more pain, she said simply, because what I did was wrong, regardless of any problems in our marriage beforehand, and because... She hesitated, then continued more quietly, because I did love you, James. For most of our marriage, I loved you deeply. That doesn't disappear instantly, even amid terrible mistakes. I didn't know how to respond to this. Part of me wanted to maintain the clean narrative of villain and victim that had carried me through the past 2 weeks. Her acknowledgement of complicated emotions muddied those clear waters. Are you still seeing him? I asked, not sure why it mattered, but needing to know. She nodded. We're living in his apartment temporarily, but it's evolving. The reality is different from the fantasy we constructed in your absence. Something flickered across her face, not quite regret, not quite uncertainty, but a close relative to both. I recognized it from my security footage, that same expression she'd worn looking back at the house. The grass isn't always greener, I observed, without satisfaction. It's not about greener grass, she replied thoughtfully. It's about different landscapes entirely. With you, I always knew what tomorrow would bring. With Ethan, I don't. That felt exciting until it started feeling unstable. Our 45 minutes was almost up. Around us, the afternoon crowd had thinned slightly, the ambient noise level dropping enough that we'd unconsciously lowered our voices. I should go, I said, reaching for my cane. Can I ask you something first? Olivia requested, her voice hesitant in a way I rarely heard. Are you going to be okay? Truly? The question caught me off guard. Its genuine concern, its acknowledgement of damage done. For the first time since discovering her betrayal, I considered the future beyond legal processes and practical adjustments. I don't know, I answered, honestly. I'm still trying to understand how someone I trusted completely could betray me so thoroughly. How 8 years of marriage provided so little protection against deception. It wasn't always deception, she said softly. Most of our marriage was real, James. Please don't rewrite all of it because of how it ended. I stood, steadying myself with the cane. The problem is, I don't know which parts to believe anymore. Every memory now requires re-evaluation. Did you mean it when you said you loved me last Christmas? Was our anniversary trip genuine or obligation? When did your truth start becoming performance? She didn't have answers that could satisfy these questions. Perhaps no one would. "I am sorry," she said as I prepared to leave, "not just for getting caught, but for the pain I've caused, for the trust I've broken." I nodded, acknowledging her apology without accepting it. "Goodbye, Olivia." Walking out of the coffee shop, I felt neither the closure I'd hoped for, nor the emotional setback Marcus had feared. Instead, I experienced something like geological shifting, tectonic plates of understanding sliding into new positions, creating a different landscape than the one I'd inhabited before. Not healing exactly, but reorganization of damage into potentially sustainable formations. Back home, I noticed the security app notification, motion detected in the living room. For a panicked moment, I wondered if Olivia had somehow entered while I was out. Opening the app revealed only natural movement, curtains billowing from an open window, catching afternoon sunlight in gentle waves. No human intrusion, just the house breathing on its own. I sat on the front steps, unexpectedly reluctant to go inside immediately. From this vantage point, I could see neighborhood children playing across the street, a mail carrier making afternoon deliveries, an elderly couple walking a small dog along the sidewalk. Normal life continuing all around the disrupted perimeter of my own existence. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How did it go? Need me to come over?" I considered his offer, appreciating his consistent support while recognizing my growing need for solitude. "I'm okay," I replied truthfully. "Meeting was surprisingly civil. Processing now. Talk tomorrow." "Of course," he responded. "Call if you need anything." I put the phone away and continued sitting, watching shadows lengthen across the lawn as afternoon progressed toward evening. The house behind me, half restored to my preferences, half transformed by their intervention, waited patiently for my next decisions. About furniture and paint colors, certainly, but more importantly, about how to inhabit space that contained both comforting memories and painful betrayal. The security cameras recorded me from multiple angles as I finally stood, using my cane to support my still healing body as I climbed the steps and opened the front door. They captured my methodical circuit through rooms that were becoming mine, again through deliberate choices rather than default ownership. They witnessed me pausing in the kitchen, then decisively removing the last of the unfamiliar objects Olivia had introduced, replacing them with things that carried my history rather than her aspirations. Reclaiming space doesn't heal betrayal, but it creates conditions where healing becomes possible. Control over small things gradually rebuilds confidence damaged by larger breaches of trust. Each conscious choice about my environment reinforced a fundamental truth I was still learning to accept. What happened in this house during my absence reflected their choices, not my inadequacies. That night, I contacted a contractor, not the one Olivia had hired, but a woman recommended by my physical therapist. We arranged a consultation about completing necessary renovations while undoing aesthetic changes that didn't suit me. Taking control of the transformation process rather than simply reacting to what others had begun. In bed that night, reviewing security footage out of habit rather than anxious vigilance, I noticed something on the driveway camera. A package had been delivered at dusk, small enough that I'd missed hearing the doorbell. Setting aside my tablet, I retrieved it, a padded envelope with no return address. Inside was a house key and a handwritten note in Olivia's distinctive script. "For whatever closure it offers, here's my key. The house should be yours. You always cared for it more deeply than I did. I've instructed my attorney accordingly. I truly am sorry, though I know that changes nothing." I placed the key on my nightstand, uncertain what emotion this gesture should evoke. Not gratitude exactly, nor complete absolution. Perhaps simple acknowledgement that even amid betrayals, wreckage, small acts of belated integrity remain possible. The security cameras watched silently as I turned out the light, as moonlight traced patterns across walls that had witnessed both love and deception as I moved toward sleep in a house that was becoming a different kind of shelter than the one I'd originally built, not impermeable to pain, but resilient enough to contain it while creating space for whatever might grow next. Spring arrived in Minneapolis with deliberate slowness, like a tentative guest unsure of its welcome. I watched it through my windows and security cameras. Gradual greening of the lawn, neighbors emerging from winter hibernation, the first tulips pushing through soil in the garden Olivia had planned, but never fully realized. My physical therapy progressed steadily, the cane now used only on particularly painful days. My body was healing according to schedule. My life was another matter entirely. 2 weeks after receiving Olivia's house key, the legal machinery of our divorce continued its methodical progress. True to her word, she had instructed her attorney to minimize contention. The financial settlement negotiations proceeded with surprising civility. She accepted responsibility for unauthorized expenditures, agreed they should be deducted from her portion of the marital assets, made no claim on the house beyond her legally entitled share of equity. Alexandra seemed almost disappointed by the lack of conflict. In my experience, she said during our weekly update call, this level of cooperation usually indicates either genuine remorse or a strategic retreat to protect something else. What else would she be protecting? I asked, gazing out at the backyard where spring rain created patterns on the patio stones. Hard to say, Alexandra admitted. Sometimes it's about public image, sometimes private relationships. People protect different things. I thought about Olivia's words during our coffee shop meeting, how she'd acknowledged what happened without attempting to justify it. About the returned house key with its simple note. About her expression on the security footage, looking back at our home before leaving. Maybe she's just trying to do the right thing, I suggested, surprising myself with this charitable interpretation. Alexandra's skepticism was evident even through the phone. Possible. Unusual in my line of work, but possible. After hanging up, I continued my new morning routine, reviewing security footage, not from anxiety, but practical awareness, checking email, planning physical therapy exercises, then tackling home renovation projects within my current abilities. Today's task was removing the wallpaper Olivia and Ethan had installed in the guest bathroom, a bold, geometric pattern that had never suited my taste. Working methodically, I steamed and scraped, finding unexpected therapy in the repetitive, physical labor. Beneath their wallpaper was the simple light blue paint we'd chosen together years earlier. Seeing it again was like uncovering a fossil, evidence of a different geological era, preserved but fundamentally changed by time and pressure. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek, my former physical therapist who had become something of a friend during recovery. Meeting cancelled. Free for lunch if you're up for leaving the fortress of solitude. I glanced around at the half-demolished bathroom, wallpaper scraps littering the floor. Fortress needs maintenance today. Rain check? Sure, he replied. Outdoor concert at the park Saturday? My sister's band is playing. I hesitated, recognizing the invitation for what it was, a gentle push toward re-engagement with the world, beyond my controlled environment. In the 8 weeks since returning home, I'd ventured out primarily for necessary appointments, physical therapy, legal consultations, occasional grocery runs. The idea of a social event, with crowds and unpredictable variables, triggered immediate resistance. I'll think about it, I texted back, a non-committal response that left options open. His reply came quickly. No pressure, but fresh air exists outside your security camera range. I smiled despite myself. Derek had a directness I appreciated, even when it challenged my retreating tendencies. I set the phone down and returned to wallpaper removal, considering his invitation while working. By late afternoon, the bathroom walls were bare, ready for whatever came next, a blank canvas, where I could create something entirely mine. That evening, reviewing security footage had become less about surveillance and more about observation, noting delivery schedules, neighborhood patterns, natural rhythms that continued regardless of personal disruption. The cameras now served a different purpose than when I'd installed them, less about protecting against outside threats, more about documenting recovery and transformation. A notification interrupted my review, motion detected at the front door. The camera showed Marcus arriving unannounced, carrying what appeared to be takeout bags. I disabled the security alarm and opened the door before he could knock. Surprise. "Dinner," he announced, holding up the bags. "Thai food and legal updates." "You could have called first," I pointed out, stepping aside to let him enter, "and give you the chance to claim you're busy." He smiled, heading directly to the kitchen he now knew well from frequent visits. Strategic surprise attack, military, tactics 101. We settled at the kitchen table with containers of pad thai and green curry, the familiar routine of shared meals creating temporary normalcy. Marcus had extended his Minneapolis stay beyond initial plans, working remotely while supporting my recovery. His presence had been crucial in those first weeks, but lately I'd sensed his growing restlessness. "Seattle misses you," I observed, passing him the spring rolls. "Your apartment probably doesn't recognize you anymore." He shrugged. "Work is portable, and you're making progress, but still needs supervision." "I'm not an invalid," I reminded him. "The infection's cleared, PT is going well. I can manage stairs without wincing now." "Physical recovery isn't my primary concern," Marcus admitted. "It's the—" He gestured vaguely around the house. "Fortress mentality. You've barely left except for appointments. You've turned down 3 dinner invitations from colleagues. You monitor those security cameras like you're expecting an invasion." I wanted to deny the assessment but recognized its accuracy. The security system that had revealed Olivia's betrayal had become both shield and lens through which I viewed the world, a controlled interface that kept unpredictability at comfortable distance. "I'm processing at my own pace," I said defensively. "Not everyone rebounds on your accelerated schedule." "It's been almost 3 months, James." His tone softened from challenge to concern. "I'm not expecting rebounds or miracles. Just movement, in some direction other than deeper withdrawal." I pushed food around my plate, appetite diminishing. "What legal updates did you bring? You mentioned 2 reasons for this ambush dinner." Marcus accepted the subject change, pulling documents from his messenger bag. "Alexandra sent settlement drafts. Everything's proceeding smoothly, too smoothly, in her professional opinion. Olivia has agreed to all proposed terms, including the house ownership transition. She's waiving claims that most divorcing spouses would fight for." I reviewed the papers, noting the favorable terms. Olivia had essentially accepted minimum legal entitlement, even agreeing to the consultant's assessment that her unauthorized spending during my hospitalization should be deducted from her portion. "This seems fair," I said, signing where indicated. "Why does Alexandra find it suspicious?" "Because people usually fight harder," Marcus explained, "even when they're clearly in the wrong. The path of least resistance typically indicates either genuine remorse or a strategic retreat to protect something else," I finished, echoing Alexandra's earlier words. "What something else are we speculating about now?" Marcus leaned back, studying me with the analytical gaze that made him an excellent attorney. "That's what's interesting. There doesn't seem to be anything. No hidden assets, no career advantage, no custody battle, just acceptance of consequences." I thought again about Olivia's expression on the security footage, looking back at our house, about her words in the coffee shop, about the returned key. "Maybe it's exactly what it appears to be," I suggested. Maybe she recognizes she made terrible choices and is trying not to compound them. Marcus looked skeptical. People seldom voluntarily accept disadvantageous terms without ulterior motive. You have a cynical perspective from your legal practice, I pointed out. Not every human interaction is strategic negotiation. Speaking of human interaction, he segued smoothly, Alexandra mentioned a potential complication. Apparently, Olivia and Ethan have separated. He moved out last week. This information landed unexpectedly, creating ripples through my carefully maintained equilibrium. How is that relevant to our settlement? Potentially not at all, Marcus acknowledged, but Alexandra thought you should know in case it affects Olivia's approach to finalizing terms. I absorbed this information, uncertain of its significance. The image I'd constructed of Olivia and Ethan, continuing their relationship in his apartment, had provided a certain narrative completion. Their separation introduced complexity I wasn't prepared to interpret. It doesn't change anything, I said. Finally, the divorce proceeds as planned. Marcus nodded, gathering empty food containers. As he cleaned up, I found myself returning to the security app, scrolling through recent footage with mechanical familiarity. The routine provided comfortable distance from emotions stirred by news of Olivia's changed circumstances. Derek invited me to an outdoor concert Saturday, I said suddenly, looking up from my phone. His sister's band is playing. Marcus paused, visibly restraining excessive enthusiasm at this small step. Sounds interesting. Planning to go? Considering it, I admitted. It would be the first non-essential outing since everything happened. Baby steps, Marcus said approvingly. Reintegration with the world happens gradually. Later that night, after Marcus departed for his hotel, I continued my evening security review. The cameras captured normal neighborhood activity, a dog walker passing by, children returning from a late sports practice, the occasional car. Nothing threatening, nothing requiring intervention. I expanded the camera view to include the backyard, where motion sensors had activated patio lights. A fox trotted confidently across the lawn, pausing to investigate something near the garden edge before continuing on its solitary journey. I watched its deliberate progress, struck by how it navigated open space with alert awareness, but without apparent fear. The next morning brought unexpected communication, an email from Olivia, her first direct contact since returning the house key. Final personal items still at the house. Is there a convenient time to collect them? Can arrange for someone else to pick up if you prefer not to see me. I stared at the message, processing implications. The formal settlement wouldn't be finalized for at least another month. But this small practical matter represented another thread being deliberately severed. I replied after careful consideration. Saturday 10 a.m. I'll box everything up. You can collect from garage. Her response came quickly. Thank you. Appreciate your help. Simple transaction, no emotional content. Yet the prospect of her return to the property, even briefly, activated dormant vigilance. I spent Friday systematically gathering her remaining possessions, winter clothes from storage bins, jewelry from the master bathroom drawer, books and personal mementos from various shelves. Each item carried associations I deliberately refused to examine, focusing instead on the mechanical task of categorization and packing. The security cameras recorded my methodical process, boxes accumulating in the garage, labeled with clinical precision: clothing, personal items, books. I worked late into the evening, ensuring tomorrow's interaction would be minimal, contained, controlled. Saturday morning arrived with unexpected perfect weather. Clear skies, gentle breeze, temperature climbing toward comfortable warmth. I placed the final boxes in the garage precisely at 9:30, then retreated to the kitchen, where I could monitor the driveway camera while maintaining physical distance. Olivia arrived at 10:03, driving a small sedan I didn't recognize rather than a usual SUV. She parked carefully, checking her appearance briefly in the rearview mirror before exiting the vehicle. The camera captured her hesitation before approaching the garage, her hand smoothing her hair in a nervous gesture I recognized from years of observation. I remained in the kitchen, watching through the security app as she entered the garage, surveyed the labeled boxes, began loading them into her car. The detached perspective felt safer than physical presence, allowing me to observe without engagement. Yet, something about the surveillance felt increasingly hollow, a pale substitute for genuine human interaction. A decision formed, surprising in its clarity. I set down my phone and walked to the garage door, opening it without specific plan or prepared script. Olivia looked up from loading a box, startled by my appearance. "James, I thought you were. I mean, you didn't need to." "It seemed odd to hide inside while you were here," I said simply. She nodded, uncertainty evident in her posture. We stood awkwardly, separated by both physical space and emotional distance. She looked different somehow, hair shorter than I remembered, wearing casual clothes rather than her usual curated style. Or perhaps I was simply seeing her through different eyes. "Thank you for organizing everything," she said eventually, gesturing toward the remaining boxes. "It's very—" She searched for the appropriate word. "Methodical." "Easier that way," I replied. "For both of us." She nodded again, returning to loading boxes. I didn't offer help, recognizing boundaries that needed maintenance, but remained present rather than retreating to remote observation. The silence between us wasn't comfortable, but wasn't intolerable either. A neutral space where separate activities could coexist without either conflict or connection. As she loaded the final box, she turned toward me with visible resolution. "I heard from my attorney that you've signed the settlement agreement." "Yes," I confirmed. "Everything proceeding, as discussed. Thank you for—" She hesitated. "For your fairness. Despite everything, you've been fair." I shrugged slightly, deflecting gratitude I wasn't sure how to process. It seemed pointlessly destructive to make this more complicated than necessary. She smiled sadly at this pragmatic assessment. Always the rational one. Someone had to be, I observed without particular rancor. She acknowledged this with a small nod, then glanced around the garage at the power tools organized on pegboards, the storage bins labeled by contents, the seasonal items arranged for efficient access, systems I'd created for a shared life that no longer existed. "I'm not with Ethan anymore," she said suddenly, the non sequitur hanging in the space between us. I maintained neutral expression, neither revealing Marcus had already shared this information, nor inviting further confidence. "That's not really my concern now." "No," she agreed quickly. "I just didn't want you thinking we were continuing what began during your hospitalization. That relationship ended badly." I considered possible responses: petty satisfaction, indifferent dismissal, probing curiosity. None seemed authentic to my current emotional state. "I hope you find whatever you're looking for, Olivia," I said finally. Whatever was missing here. Her eyes met mine directly for the first time during our interaction. "Nothing was missing, James. That's what I've realized too late. I had everything and didn't recognize its value. Classic human error." The frank admission created momentary connection. Not reconciliation, not forgiveness, but simple recognition. Between two people who had once known each other intimately and now stood as respectful strangers. "I should go," she said, closing her car trunk with definitive movement. "Thank you again for making this easier than it could have been." I nodded acknowledgement, watching as she drove away, the security camera recording her departure from multiple angles, Different perspectives on the same reality. Back inside, I noticed the time, nearly noon. Derek's concert invitation floated back into conscious awareness. A decision point presented itself. Retreat into familiar security or movement toward unknown possibility. I texted Derek, "Concert still happening today? What time?" His response came immediately, 2 p.m. at Loring Park. "Want me to pick you up?" I hesitated, cursor blinking in the message field. The security app notification interrupted my deliberation. Motion in the front yard. Opening the app showed neighborhood children retrieving an errant ball from my lawn. Normal Saturday activity, captured by vigilant cameras that never tired of observation. I closed the security app and returned to the text message. "I'll meet you there. Just tell me where." Derek's response contained both location details and poorly concealed enthusiasm about my acceptance. I set the phone down and went upstairs to shower, noticing how security cameras recorded my movement through the house. A parallel observation of existence that had become so normalized, I barely registered it anymore. Standing under hot water, I contemplated the morning's interaction with Olivia. The controlled engagement had been neither as difficult nor as revealing as anticipated. No dramatic revelations, no emotional breakdowns, just two adults navigating necessary separation with appropriate boundaries. There was something almost anticlimactic about it, the mundane reality of endings compared to heightened narratives of confrontation or reconciliation. After showering, I dressed carefully for the outdoor concert, practical comfort rather than impression management, but still a deliberate choice. The security cameras recorded this preparation like silent witnesses, documenting my movements, without interpretation or judgment. Before leaving, I conducted standard departure protocol, checking locks, adjusting thermostat, setting security system to away mode. The rituals provided familiar structure, but something felt different today. Less like fortress defense, more like routine home maintenance. As I backed out of the driveway, the security app pinged with the expected notification. "Front door. Secured. System armed." The cameras would continue their vigilant observation in my absence, recording nothing of significance, maintaining diligent watch over empty rooms. For the first time since returning home from the hospital, this thought provided comfort rather than anxiety. The systems were working as designed, allowing me the freedom to step beyond their range, however temporarily. The drive to Loring Park followed familiar routes through a city that had continued its regular rhythms throughout my personal disruption. Traffic patterns, construction projects, seasonal activities, all progressing according to their own timelines, indifferent to individual crises. Parking proved challenging, the pleasant weather having drawn crowds to the park. As I walked from the distant spot I'd finally secured, I noticed myself scanning surroundings with habitual vigilance, assessing potential threats, identifying exit routes, maintaining awareness of environmental variables. Security consciousness persisted even beyond camera range. Derek waved from a spot on the lawn where he'd spread a blanket, looking genuinely pleased at my arrival. "You actually came. I was giving it 50-50 odds." "Your confidence in me is overwhelming," I said dryly, lowering myself carefully. To the blanket, still mindful of occasional leg pain. "Strategic underestimation," he grinned, "sets the bar low enough that simply showing up makes you a hero." The easy banter felt surprisingly natural, a social muscle not entirely atrophied. Despite months of limited use, around us, strangers enjoyed the perfect spring day. Couples sharing picnics, families with energetic children, groups of friends laughing over shared stories. "My sister's band is up third," Derek explained, offering a program with performance schedule. "They're surprisingly not terrible." High praise from a sibling, I observed, scanning the crowd with decreasing vigilance as familiar park surroundings registered as non-threatening. Mandatory familial support, tempered by honest assessment, he clarified. Exactly the right balance. As we waited for performances to begin, Derek maintained conversation that neither probed painful topics nor avoided acknowledgement of recent events. A delicate balance that respected both history and potential. Recovery. When his phone rang, he checked the screen with mild annoyance. Hospital, mind if I take this? Should be quick. I gestured permission, watching him step away for the call, his expression shifting to professional focus. Around me, park activity continued its pleasant chaos. A toddler chasing bubbles, an elderly couple holding hands on a nearby bench, a dog straining at its leash to greet another canine acquaintance. For a moment, I imagined how this scene would appear on security footage. Movements without context, interactions without emotional content, human complexity reduced to observable patterns. The limitations of that perspective seemed suddenly obvious, its inadequacy for capturing authentic experience. Derek returned, apologizing for the interruption. Hospital administration, he explained. Scheduling conflict for Monday's patients. Resolved? I asked, finding myself genuinely interested in this mundane problem. Temporarily, he smiled. Healthcare is perpetual crisis management disguised as healing profession. As music began from the park's central stage, I realized something significant had shifted, not dramatic epiphany, but subtle perspective adjustment. The security cameras that had revealed betrayal had served their purpose. They would remain practical tools, but their role as filtering interface between myself and direct experience had diminished. The first band played upbeat folk rock that matched the day's energy. Around us, strangers enjoyed music, sunshine, companionship, simple pleasures that continued regardless of individual circumstances. I found myself tapping rhythm against my knee, drawn into collective experience despite habitual reservations. "Thanks for the invitation," I said during a break between songs. "This is good." Derek nodded, understanding the significance beyond the simple statement. "Baby steps," he said, echoing Marcus's phrase. "Reintegration happens gradually." As afternoon sun cast lengthening shadows across the park lawn, I recognized an unfamiliar emotion gradually emerging. Not happiness exactly, but something adjacent. Perhaps simply the recognition that life continues its complex patterns beyond security camera range, offering possibilities that cannot be captured through remote observation alone. Summer arrived in Minneapolis with characteristic intensity, transforming the city from spring's gentle awakening to humid vibrancy practically overnight. My neighborhood burst into full bloom, flower beds exploding with color, trees forming canopies of deep green shade, yards filled with the sounds of children released from school's constraints. Life accelerating all around while my own continued, its measured pace of recovery. 4 months had passed since the hospital discharge that had revealed Olivia's betrayal. My physical rehabilitation was essentially complete, occasional stiffness and weather-related aches, the only remaining evidence of the skiing accident that had fractured more than just bone. The divorce proceedings continued their methodical progress, paperwork moving through legal channels with surprising efficiency given the system's typical delays. Marcus had finally returned to Seattle 3 weeks earlier, satisfied that my recovery, both physical and emotional, had reached sustainable stability. "You're no longer at immediate risk of becoming a reclusive security system hermit," he'd declared while packing his suitcase, "but I'm still monitoring from a distance. Consider me an emotional satellite system." I'd been touched by his extended support, recognizing the significant disruption to his own life. "Go rebuild your Seattle existence," I'd told him. "I promise not to collapse without your supervision." His absence created both relief and challenge, freedom from constant concerned observation, but also increased responsibility for my own reintegration with normal life. I'd maintained the forward momentum begun at Derek's concert, gradually expanding my world beyond security camera range. Weekly physical therapy had evolved into regular gym sessions. Work responsibilities had increased from part-time remote, consulting back to full engagement, though still primarily from my home office. Social connections had cautiously resumed. Occasional dinners with colleagues, a fishing trip with old friends, even a community volunteer project Derek had recruited. Me for painting a local youth centre. Small steps, as Marcus and Derek both characterized them. But movement nonetheless, each one making the next slightly easier. The security cameras remained, of course. I still reviewed footage routinely, still maintained awareness of activity around my property, but the perspective had shifted from a primary interface with the world to practical tool with specific purpose. The system no longer defined my relationship with external reality, but simply augmented it, providing information rather than replacement for direct experience. On this particular Tuesday morning, I was reviewing overnight camera alerts before beginning work when an unexpected notification appeared. Motion detected at the front door at 6:17 a.m. before I'd awakened. I opened the footage to find a courier, delivering an envelope, tucking it securely beneath the welcome mat rather than ringing the doorbell at such an early hour. Curious, I retrieved the envelope. Heavy cream stationery rather than standard business correspondence, my name handwritten, in unfamiliar script. Inside was a formal invitation to Walter Chen's retirement celebration, scheduled for the following month at the Minneapolis club. Walter had been my mentor at MedTech Solutions, the senior developer who had championed my initial hiring and subsequent advancement. We'd worked closely for years before his promotion to executive leadership had reduced our direct collaboration. I hadn't seen Walter since before my accident, our communication limited to a few supportive emails during my hospitalization and recovery. The invitation included a handwritten note. James, your presence would mean a great deal. Hope you can attend despite the formal setting. Let me know if you need accommodation for mobility. Walter. His consideration touched me, though my physical recovery had progressed well beyond requiring special arrangements. The greater challenge was psychological rather than physical. A formal industry event meant encountering numerous colleagues and connections, including potentially mutual acquaintances of Olivia and myself. The thought triggered immediate resistance. My phone rang, interrupting this contemplation. The caller ID showed Alexandra Chen, my divorce attorney. "Good morning, James," she began without preamble when I answered. "I've just received the final judge's order. Your divorce is officially granted, effective yesterday." The information landed with surprising weight, despite being entirely expected. "That was fast," I observed, moving to my home office window that overlooked the garden. Uncontested divorces with comprehensive settlement agreements tend to move efficiently through the system, Alexandra explained, especially with a judge like Peterson, who appreciates thorough preparation. "I'll email the official documentation, and today, but wanted to deliver the news personally." "Thank you," I said, watching a robin hop across the patio stones, searching for breakfast. "So it's done." "Legally, yes," she confirmed. "The property transfer paperwork for the house will process automatically based on the settlement agreement. You'll receive confirmation once it's complete, likely within 2 weeks." After concluding the call, I sat at my desk, absorbing the significance of this administrative milestone. 8 years of marriage officially concluded via judicial signature. Identity legally transformed from husband back to individual. Relationship status altered in government databases and financial institutions by formal decree. I opened my security app, scrolling through saved clips from various time frames. Footage from last winter showed snow accumulating on the empty driveway. During my hospitalization, Later clips captured Olivia and Ethan's arrival with his belongings, their comfortable domesticity in spaces I'd created, their eventual hasty departure following confrontation. More recent recordings documented my gradual reclamation of those spaces, contractors arriving to complete necessary renovations while reversing unwanted changes, delivery workers bringing furniture I'd selected to replace their additions, friends visiting with increasing frequency as isolation diminished, a visual timeline of dissolution and reconstruction captured with the mechanical objectivity unique to security footage. No emotional interpretation, just movement and activity recorded in precise timestamp sequence. I closed the app and turned instead to Walter's invitation. The formal celebration represented a different kind of milestone, not legally mandated. Transition, but voluntary participation in communal acknowledgement. An opportunity to step fully back into professional identity, separate from personal disruption. I texted Derek, who had become something of a sounding board during recent months. Invited to fancy retirement party for former mentor. Industry, people, potential awkwardness, formal setting. Thoughts? His response came quickly, during what was presumably a break between patients. Perfect re-entry to professional world. Limited duration event, structured interactions, celebration focus diverts attention from personal drama. Plus, chance to wear that suit that's getting depressed in your closet. I smiled at his characteristic blend of practical assessment and gentle prodding. Divorce finalized today feels like weird timing. Or perfect timing, he countered. Symbolic fresh start. Wear power tie. Bring me as emotional support human if needed. The offer, though partly joking, reflected the evolving friendship that had developed from our initial therapeutic relationship. Derek possessed a refreshing directness combined with genuine understanding of recovery processes, having witnessed countless patients navigate physical and emotional rebuilding after significant trauma. "We'll consider," I replied, returning to work responsibilities that demanded attention regardless of personal milestones. That evening, after completing a particularly challenging coding problem, I found myself restless in ways that had become less frequent but still occasionally surfaced. The house felt simultaneously too empty and too full, absent of the partnership I'd once assumed permanent, yet saturated with memories that resisted complete erasure despite deliberate redecoration. Acting on impulse, I texted Walter directly rather than responding to the formal RSVP channel included with the invitation. "Received your retirement invitation. Wouldn't miss it. No accommodations needed, but appreciate the consideration. Looking forward to celebrating your remarkable career." His response arrived within minutes. "Excellent news, James. Been too long. Would welcome catching up before the formal event if you're available. Coffee next week." The suggestion triggered mild apprehension, but also recognition of its appropriateness. Walter had been more than just a professional mentor. He'd been something of a personal confidant during key career transitions. Our connection had diminished with his executive promotion and my subsequent preoccupation with home life, but the foundation remained. "Coffee sounds good," I replied. "Name the time and place." We arranged to meet the following Tuesday at a café equidistant between our respective locations. The simple scheduling felt like tentative re-engagement with pre-trauma patterns, normal professional relationship maintenance undertaken without security camera mediation or emotional hypervigilance. That night, my routine security review revealed nothing requiring attention. Normal neighborhood activity, expected delivery confirmation, natural movement from evening breezes stirring porch plants. I found myself spending less time examining footage, more quickly satisfied with basic confirmation that home systems functioned properly, progress unmarked by specific milestone, but evident in changed behavior patterns. The meeting with Walter proved unexpectedly significant. We met at the agreed café, a moderately upscale establishment featuring comfortable seating and sufficient privacy for conversation. Walter arrived precisely on time, looking essentially unchanged, despite the years since our last in-person interaction. Still trim and energetic despite approaching 70, silver hair impeccably groomed, attire casually professional. His greeting was warm, but not effusive, respecting potential social awkwardness without amplifying it. "James, good to see you in person. You're looking well." "Recovery complete, more or less," I confirmed as we settled at a corner table with coffee. "Congratulations on the retirement. Surprised the company let you escape." He smiled slightly. "Less escape, more strategic transition. I'll maintain board membership and consulting relationships. Retirement primarily means freedom from daily operational responsibilities." The conversation progressed naturally from professional updates to industry developments, the familiar territory creating comfortable foundation for re-established connection. Walter had always possessed the rare ability to maintain focus on substantive matters without ignoring personal context, a balance evident in how he eventually, without awkward transition, acknowledged my changed circumstances. "I was sorry to hear about your marriage," he said during a natural pause in conversation, "particularly the timing and circumstances. Challenging situation handled with characteristic dignity, from what I understand." The comment contained neither invasive curiosity nor excessive sympathy, simple acknowledgement of significant life event from someone with sufficient connection to mention it, but sufficient respect to avoid detailed inquiry. "Thank you," I replied, appreciating his approach. "Final paperwork just processed coincidentally, ready to focus forward rather than backward." Walter nodded, understanding. "Similar philosophy guided my retirement decision. Appropriate acknowledgement of completed chapter while embracing next phase." He paused, seeming to consider something before continuing. "The company celebration is necessarily formal, but I'm hosting a smaller gathering beforehand at my home. Closer colleagues, less ceremonial atmosphere. You'd be welcome to join that as well." The invitation represented another potential step in reintegration. More intimate social setting, likely including people familiar with my situation, but focused on Walter rather than my circumstances. Decision point requiring assessment of readiness versus reluctance. "I'd like that," I said, surprising myself with the immediacy of acceptance. "Thank you for including me." Our conversation continued, covering topics from healthcare software innovation to shared memories of early company challenges, creating bridge between past connection and present reality that acknowledged changed circumstances without making them central focus. As we prepared to leave, Walter offered one final observation that resonated unexpectedly. "Life rarely follows anticipated trajectories, James. The ability to recalibrate without becoming permanently disoriented separates those who ultimately thrive from those who remain perpetually disrupted by unexpected course corrections." The insight stayed with me throughout the day, its applicability extending beyond professional adaptability to personal resilience. Recalibration without disorientation. Course correction without permanent destabilization. Navigation continuing despite map revision. That evening's security review took on different significance. Less vigilant monitoring of potential threats, more thoughtful assessment of current reality accurately perceived. The cameras captured a home gradually evolving from scene of betrayal to foundation for whatever came next. They documented not just movement and activity, but transformation occurring in small cumulative adjustments rather than dramatic renovation. The following weeks brought increasing engagement with world beyond security camera range. Work projects demanded occasional in-person collaboration at corporate headquarters. Walter's smaller pre-retirement gathering required appropriate gift selection and social preparation. Regular gym sessions evolved to include occasional rock climbing with Derek and several physical therapists from his clinic, activity requiring trust in both equipment and climbing partners. Each engagement represented recalibration rather than complete reinvention, adjustments to changed reality rather than attempt to recreate previous existence or construct entirely new identity. The security cameras remained, recording this gradual evolution from multiple perspectives, but their significance continued diminishing as direct experience increasingly replaced remote observation. Walter's home gathering occurred on a perfect, early summer evening, his lakeside property offering stunning sunset views from an expansive deck. Approximately 20 guests attended, primarily colleagues from various career stages, several board members, a few family connections. The atmosphere balanced professional respect with personal warmth, exactly as Walter himself had always done. I arrived exactly on time, bringing a carefully selected gift, first edition technical manual that had guided our earliest collaborative projects, inscribed with personal note acknowledging its significance in our shared professional development. The selection had required thoughtful consideration rather than perfunctory obligation fulfillment, engagement with meaningful history rather than symbolic gesture. Several attendees greeted me with evident but tactfully restrained surprise, clearly aware of recent events but professionally refraining from direct reference. Others engaged naturally, focusing on current projects or industry developments rather than personal circumstances. Walter himself facilitated ideal introductions, neither overemphasizing nor ignoring contextual factors. Midway through the evening, I found myself conversing with Elaine Matthews, MedTech's current Chief Technology Officer and Walter's professional successor. We'd worked together periodically throughout my tenure, but never developed close connection due to different departmental alignments. Your contributions to the patient data integration project were foundational, she remarked, referencing work I'd completed before my medical leave. The architecture you developed has scaled remarkably well as implementation expanded. Glad to hear it's performing effectively, I replied, genuinely pleased by this professional validation. The team deserves tremendous credit for implementation refinements. True, she acknowledged, but solid foundation made those refinements possible rather than perpetual crisis management. She paused, seeming to consider something before continuing. We're launching several new initiatives following Walter's transition. Your expertise would be valuable if you're interested in greater involvement. The comment contained subtle testing of availability and interest level, professional opportunity offered without pressure or assumption. Clear recognition of my capabilities separate from personal circumstances. I'd be interested in discussing possibilities, I responded, recognizing internal readiness that might have been absent even weeks earlier. Currently consulting remotely, but open to expanded engagement. Our conversation developed naturally into preliminary exploration of potential projects, creating bridge between past contributions and future possibilities without artificial constraints. Throughout this discussion, I noticed myself fully present in the interaction, not mentally monitoring home security, not hyper-analyzing social dynamics, not filtering experience through trauma-tinted perspective, simply engaged professional, exchanging ideas with respected colleague. Later, as formal toasts honored Walter's career achievements, I observed the gathering with unexpected clarity. These connections represented continuity despite disruption, professional identity maintained throughout personal upheaval, capabilities recognized independent of relationship status, future possibilities undiminished by past betrayal. The security. Cameras at home continued their vigilant recording during my absence, documenting empty rooms awaiting return rather than spaces requiring constant monitoring. Their purpose remained valid: practical home protection rather than emotional insulation, but their psychological significance had fundamentally transformed from primary interface with reality to appropriate tool with specific function. The formal retirement celebration the following evening presented greater social complexity. Larger venue, expanded guest list, more ceremonial atmosphere. I arrived independently, rather than seeking companion buffer, deliberately choosing full engagement despite potential discomfort. The Minneapolis club maintained its traditional elegance, historic architecture, impeccable service, atmosphere of established significance. Attending industry leaders represented both professional opportunity and potential awkwardness, given inevitable awareness of my personal situation through community grapevine. I navigated the cocktail hour with deliberate intention, engaging substantively with key connections, acknowledging acquaintances appropriately, maintaining focus on Walter's celebration rather than personal narrative. Several interactions provided surprising affirmation of continued professional respect despite recent absence. Others offered natural reintegration with industry developments and emerging opportunities. During dinner, seated at a table with several long-standing colleagues, conversation flowed naturally between celebration of Walter's achievements and exploration of evolving healthcare technology landscape. I contributed where appropriate, listened attentively, participated fully without dominating or withdrawing. Normal professional behavior that nevertheless represented significant recovery milestone. After formal program concluded, as attendees circulated during dessert service, an unexpected encounter occurred. Thomas Fitzgerald, MedTech's marketing director, approached with clear intention despite our limited previous interaction. "James, good to see you back in circulation," he began with characteristic directness. "Been meaning to connect about potential collaboration between your technical expertise and our market expansion initiatives." "Interesting possibility," I acknowledged, genuinely intrigued by unexpected intersection. "What specifically did you have in mind?" As he outlined potential project parameters, I realized something significant about this interaction. It represented my first conversation with someone I knew had been closely connected to Olivia through professional association. Thomas had worked directly with her design firm on several marketing initiatives, relationship that had undoubtedly included awareness of her personal situation, given industry community interconnections, yet nothing in his approach referenced this knowledge. No awkward avoidance, no careful tiptoeing, simply professional engagement focused on potential collaboration. Either remarkable discretion or genuine focus on capabilities rather than circumstances, possibly both. I'd be interested in exploring how technical architecture could support those market objectives, I responded once he'd outlined general concept. Schedule time to discuss detailed requirements. He agreed enthusiastically, immediately suggesting potential meeting times with characteristic efficiency. Normal professional interaction undertaken without special accommodation for personal circumstances, exactly the engagement I would have expected before events that temporarily redefined my identity. As the evening concluded, Walter sought me out specifically, clapping my shoulder with genuine warmth. "Truly glad you could attend both gatherings, James. Your presence meant a great deal." "Wouldn't have missed honoring your contributions," I replied sincerely. "You've shaped not just the company, but countless careers, including mine." He nodded acknowledgement, then added thoughtfully, "Transitions create both challenge and opportunity, professional and personal. Navigation requires both resilience and adaptability." The comment contained no direct reference to my circumstances, yet acknowledged them without invasive specificity. Classic Walter wisdom, applicable broadly while resonating individually. Driving home after the event, I realized something significant had shifted during these 2 evenings of professional re-engagement. Not dramatic transformation, but subtle recalibration, adjustment of perspective that recognized changed circumstances without allowing them to permanently redefine possibilities. The security cameras documented my arrival home, recording standard movements through familiar spaces. Their function remained legitimate, practical monitoring of property during absence and presence. But their psychological significance had fundamentally evolved from necessary emotional buffer to appropriate practical tool. They no longer mediated my relationship with reality, but simply provided specific information about particular environment. Inside, I reviewed the evening's interactions with clinical assessment rather than anxious analysis. Professional connections maintained despite personal disruption, future opportunities undiminished by past betrayal, identity neither artificially preserved nor completely reinvented, but thoughtfully recalibrated to integrate both continuity and change. The security footage showed normal household patterns, lights activating on schedule, environmental systems, maintaining appropriate settings, exterior monitoring recording, nothing requiring attention, standard functionality, providing practical information without emotional amplification. That night, reviewing calendar for upcoming weeks, I entered several new appointments. Meeting with Thomas regarding potential collaboration, gym session, including new rock climbing group, dinner with Walter following board meeting where my expanded consultation role would be formalized. Normal professional and personal scheduling representing neither dramatic reinvention nor desperate preservation, but thoughtful navigation of evolving reality. The security cameras continued recording from multiple angles, documenting this gradual recalibration from perspectives that captured physical reality without emotional interpretation. They had revealed betrayal during absence, maintained vigilance during recovery, and now witnessed emergence of recalibrated existence, neither defined by trauma nor artificially separated from it, but integrating experience into evolved perspective that acknowledged both continuity and transformation. 1 year after discovering Olivia's betrayal, autumn painted Minneapolis in brilliant oranges and deep reds. The maple tree in my front yard, our front yard once, now legally and emotionally mine alone, created a canopy of fire-colored leaves that the security cameras captured in surprising detail. Technology documenting natural transformation, recording changes that occurred regardless of human drama. My home had evolved during these 12 months, renovations completed according to my preferences rather than compromised design choices or abandoned projects. The kitchen now featured open shelving displaying my collection of handmade pottery gathered from various travels. The office contained the standing desk I'd always wanted, but Olivia had considered visually disruptive. The master bathroom had been completely reimagined with a walk-in shower, replacing the rarely used soaking tub she'd insisted upon during initial construction. Practical changes reflecting both functional needs and personal aesthetic rather than conscious rejection of previous shared vision. Evolution rather than reaction. Recalibration rather than erasure. Professional life had similarly transformed. Following Walter's retirement celebration, the expanded consultation role had evolved into formal leadership position, heading technical architecture for MedTech's next-generation patient data platform. The collaboration with Thomas Fitzgerald's marketing team had proven unexpectedly productive, resulting in both industry recognition and internal advancement. Work had resumed its central place in my identity without becoming unhealthy escape from personal reality. The doorbell interrupted my morning coffee ritual, unusual for 7:30 a.m. on a Thursday. Security cameras showed delivery person leaving package rather than awaiting response. Nothing requiring immediate attention, but curiosity prompted retrieval. Before beginning workday, the package contained advanced copies of Healthcare Technology Quarterly featuring cover story about MedTech's innovative approach to patient data integration. Project I'd architected before my accident and expanded significantly during recent months. Accompanying note from Thomas expressed characteristic enthusiasm, significant visibility for groundbreaking work, well-deserved recognition for your vision. Interviews already requested from 3 industry publications. Professional accomplishment, acknowledged through tangible artifact rather than abstract metrics. Work valued for its substantive contribution rather than political positioning. Achievement recognized through legitimate external validation. I placed 1 copy on my desk for later reading, photographed cover for sharing with Marcus, then prepared for morning video conference with development team. Normal professional activity undertaken without security camera monitoring or hypervigilance regarding potential threats. Standard workday beginning without emotional amplification. The meeting proceeded efficiently, technical challenges addressed. Through collaborative problem-solving rather than hierarchical direction, my leadership style had evolved during recent months, incorporating both confidence from experience and humility from personal disruption. Team members responded with increasing engagement, contributions reflecting shared investment in project success rather than individual agenda advancement. Following the conference, calendar notification reminded me of evening plans. Dinner with Derek and Sophia, the emergency department physician he'd been dating for several months. Their relationship had developed gradually, both professionals maintaining appropriate boundaries while building genuine connection. My friendship with Derek had similarly evolved from therapeutic relationship to mutual respect and enjoyment of shared activities despite different professional domains. The planned dinner represented another milestone in normal social functioning. Engagement with developing relationship of friend without hyper-analysis or excessive comparison to personal experience. Genuine interest in their dynamic without projecting past disappointment or future skepticism. Present focused attention to actual individuals rather than symbolic representation. Midday brought unexpected communication. Email from Alexandra Chen requesting brief call regarding final administrative matter related to divorce proceedings that had concluded months earlier. Curiosity, rather than anxiety, prompted immediate response, scheduling conversation during afternoon break between project meetings. Thanks for making time, James, Alexandra began when I answered her call. This is purely administrative. Final confirmation that property deed transfer has been completed following mandatory waiting period. You should receive official documentation next week, but wanted to provide verbal notification. Appreciate the update, I replied, glancing out office window at garden where late-season vegetables continued producing despite approaching frost warnings. Didn't realize additional processing remained. Standard procedure with property settlements, she explained. System moves deliberately to ensure all parties have appropriate reconsideration period before permanent transfers finalize. After concluding the call, I found myself considering this final administrative milestone with unexpected clarity. The house that had witnessed both partnership and betrayal, both shared dreams and unilateral reinvention, now belonged solely to me through both legal declaration and emotional reclamation. Property ownership reflecting actual relationship with space rather than vestigial connection to form a partnership. The security cameras documented this moment from multiple angles. Routine professional conversation in home office surrounded by artifacts reflecting current reality rather than preserved past or artificially constructed future. Normal afternoon activity recorded with mechanical objectivity, neither amplifying emotional significance nor minimizing practical completion. That evening, Dinner with Derek and Sophia provided welcome engagement with lives developing according to their own trajectories, rather than parallel to mine. Their relationship contained appropriate enthusiasm tempered by professional realism. Two adults building connection based on shared values and compatible aspirations, rather than romantic fantasy or pragmatic compromise. Hospital administration remains convinced interoperability standards represent excessive regulatory burden, Sophia explained during discussion of healthcare technology challenges. Meanwhile, emergency physicians waste critical minutes searching multiple systems for essential patient information. Exactly the problem our new platform addresses, I noted. Professional interest engaged without dominating social interaction. Integration architecture specifically designed to maintain regulatory compliance while improving clinical workflow efficiency. Derek contributed perspective from rehabilitation medicine, different domain with related challenges regarding longitudinal patient data access across treatment settings. Conversation flowed naturally between professional insights and personal observations, creating balanced engagement rather than tactical avoidance of sensitive topics. Driving home afterward, I noticed myself fully present in the experience, attentive to traffic patterns, appreciative of city skyline, illuminated against clear autumn night, mentally processing evening's conversation without hyper-analysis or comparison to past relationships. Normal awareness, reflecting healthy engagement, rather than hyper-vigilance or emotional disconnection. The security system notification pinged as I approached home. Motion detected on front porch. Camera footage showed neighborhood cat investigating. Potted chrysanthemums rather than concerning intrusion. Simple information provided without emotional amplification. Appropriate technological functionality without psychological dependency. Inside, routine evening activities proceeded without extraordinary significance. Email responses to international team members in different time zones. Brief review of next day's meeting agenda. Preparation for morning workout before professional responsibilities resumed, normal life patterns reflecting neither desperate avoidance of past trauma nor artificial construction of unrelated identity. The security cameras continued their vigilant recording from multiple angles, documenting these ordinary activities with mechanical consistency. Their presence remained appropriate given practical home protection benefits, but their psychological significance had fundamentally transformed. No longer primary interface with potentially threatening world or essential buffer between vulnerable self and external reality. Simply practical tools fulfilling specific function within broader life context. Morning arrived with unexpected weather shift, temperature dropping sharply overnight, creating first frost warning of season. Security footage showed delicate ice crystals forming on garden vegetation, capturing natural transition with remarkable clarity. Technology documenting seasonal change with objective precision. Professional responsibilities dominated the day. Client presentations requiring focused attention. Development team needing architectural guidance for implementation challenges. Marketing materials requiring technical review for accuracy. Normal work engagement reflecting neither obsessive escape from personal reality nor diminished commitment following life disruption. Late afternoon brought communication from Walter, brief message-sharing industry publication highlighting MedTech's innovation leadership with specific acknowledgement of my architectural contribution. His note contained characteristic blend of professional recognition and personal encouragement, well-deserved acknowledgement of exceptional work during challenging circumstances. Technical excellence maintained regardless of personal disruption, hallmark of true professional. The validation registered without disproportionate significance, appreciated recognition from respected mentor rather than desperately needed external affirmation. Appropriate acknowledgement of professional accomplishment separate from personal circumstances without artificial division between integrated aspects of identity. That evening, calendar notification reminded me of weekend plans. Climbing expedition, with Derek's outdoor group to North Shore rock formations. Activity requiring both physical capability and trusting partnership. Engagement demanding present-focused attention rather than past-oriented rumination or future-focused anxiety. Preparation involved practical equipment checking rather than psychological contingency planning or emotional fortification. The security system would maintain appropriate home monitoring during my absence, fulfilling practical function without emotional significance. Technology operating as intended without psychological dependency or symbolic representation. Tool rather than protective barrier or emotional prosthesis. Packing for the weekend expedition, I noticed myself mentally present in the activity, considering weather forecasts and appropriate clothing options, checking technical equipment with proper attention, preparing food with practical awareness of energy requirements during sustained physical exertion, normal preparation reflecting neither hypervigilance nor careless inattention. An unexpected text message interrupted this preparation. Notification from Neighborhood Association regarding community planning meeting scheduled following week. Normal civic engagement opportunity rather than anxiety-producing social obligation. Or strategic identity management requirement. Simple communication, requiring straightforward response without emotional amplification. As evening progressed into night, routine security system check revealed nothing requiring attention. Normal neighborhood activity, appropriate environmental system functioning, standard property status without concerning anomalies. Information, reviewed with practical interest rather than anxious hypervigilance or compulsive verification. Sleep came without extraordinary assistance or unusual difficulty. Normal biological function, neither artificially induced nor pathologically disrupted. The security cameras continued their silent observation through darkened rooms, recording nothing of significance during overnight hours. Technology functioning as designed without emotional projection or psychological dependency. Morning brought. Final expedition preparations. Equipment loaded efficiently. Communication confirmed with climbing partners. House systems adjusted appropriately for temporary absence. Normal departure procedures reflecting practical consideration rather than anxiety-driven hypervigilance or abandonment concerns. The security system activated automatically as I left, cameras maintaining appropriate observation during my absence. Final notification confirmed proper functioning. System armed, away mode activated. Simple technological communication without emotional resonance or psychological significance. Driving toward meeting location, I noticed vibrant autumn colors, transforming familiar landscape. Seasonal change, progressing according to natural patterns regardless of human circumstances. Trees releasing leaves in spectacular final display before winter dormancy. Natural cycles continuing their ancient rhythms while human lives evolved according to their own complex trajectories. Derek greeted me at designated gathering point with characteristic enthusiasm, introducing several group members I hadn't previously met. James designs those healthcare systems your doctors are always complaining about, he explained with typical irreverent humor. Blame him directly for all user interface frustrations. The introduction created immediate connection through shared understanding of healthcare technology challenges. Normal social interaction based on authentic representation rather than strategic self-presentation or trauma-influenced identity management. Conversation developed naturally among climbing partners preparing for shared adventure, requiring mutual trust and coordinated effort. As equipment was distributed and safety procedures reviewed, I found myself fully engaged in present experience. Attentive to technical requirements, responsive to partner communication, appropriately focused on immediate environment rather than distracted by unrelated concerns or preoccupied with security system functioning during absence. The climbing route selected for the day presented moderate technical challenge, requiring concentrated effort without excessive risk. North Shore Formation offering magnificent autumn vistas as reward for successful ascent. Partners organized into appropriate pairings based on experience level and established trust relationships. Derek and I began our ascent with practiced coordination, communication clear, and movement synchronized through shared understanding developed during months of similar activities. Physical exertion created immediate focus, attention necessarily directed to present reality rather than past disappointment or future uncertainty. Midway up the formation, secured temporarily to stable anchor point, I paused to appreciate surrounding landscape, Lake Superior stretching toward distant horizon, forests displaying spectacular autumn transformation, clear sky creating perfect backdrop for natural beauty, moment of genuine presence without performance or pretense. Not bad for a guy who couldn't walk without a cane this time last year, Derek observed from adjacent position, characteristic blend of medical assessment and personal encouragement. Recovery happens, I replied simply, recognizing truth beyond. Physical rehabilitation. Different timeline for different aspects. We continued upward, each movement requiring attention to immediate reality rather than distraction by unrelated concerns. The security system monitoring my empty house existed as abstract knowledge rather than constant preoccupation, technology fulfilling appropriate function in relevant context without psychological over-centralization. Reaching the summit required final challenging sequence, difficult hand placement, counterintuitive body positioning, trust in equipment functioning, and partner vigilance. Concentration necessarily complete, attention undivided, presence absolute rather than partial or performative. Standing finally at peak elevation, surrounded by climbing partners experiencing similar accomplishment satisfaction, I recognize something significant about this moment. Not dramatic revelation or extraordinary insight, but simple recognition of present reality experienced directly rather than through protective filters or emotional barriers. The security cameras that had revealed betrayal had served essential function when necessary. They had documented violation when understanding required evidence. They had provided appropriate protection during vulnerable recovery period. Their practical utility remained valid for specific purpose in proper context, but life, actual, meaningful human existence occurred beyond camera range, outside recorded footage, beyond monitored perimeters. It happened in direct engagement, with natural beauty and human connection, in professional challenge and personal accomplishment, in ordinary moments experienced authentically rather than observed remotely. The cameras would continue their vigilant recording from multiple angles, documenting empty rooms awaiting return rather than spaces requiring constant monitoring. Their function remained appropriate, practical home protection during absence, but their significance had fundamentally transformed from psychological necessity to practical tool. Technology fulfilling intended purpose rather than emotional surrogate or identity foundation. Descending the formation required different skills than ascent. Controlled release rather than effortful advancement. Managed retreat rather than determined progress. Partners maintained appropriate communication throughout, ensuring mutual safety through coordinated movement and verified procedures. Reaching ground level brought spontaneous celebration among climbing participants, shared acknowledgement of accomplishment without excessive self-congratulation or artificial modesty. Normal social interaction reflecting genuine experience rather than performative identity management or strategic impression creation. Driving home, as evening approached, I found myself reflecting on the day's experience with clear perspective. Not dramatic transformation or extraordinary revelation, but quiet confirmation of recovery progression, ability to engage authentically with present reality without constant reference to past betrayal or anxious anticipation of future disappointment. The security system notification arrived precisely as expected upon approaching home. Motion detected. Authorized user approaching. Technology functioning exactly as designed, providing appropriate information without emotional amplification or psychological dependency. Inside, the house welcomed return with familiar comfort. Spaces arranged according to actual preferences rather than compromised negotiations or abandoned projects. Rooms reflecting current reality rather than preserved past or artificially constructed future. Home serving appropriate function as personal sanctuary without becoming emotional fortress or psychological prison. The security cameras recorded this return from multiple angles, documenting normal homecoming activities with mechanical objectivity. Their presence remained appropriate given practical benefits, but their psychological significance had fundamentally transformed. They had revealed betrayal during absence, maintained vigilance during recovery, and now witnessed emergence of recalibrated existence, neither defined by trauma nor artificially separated from it, but integrating experience into evolved perspective that acknowledged both continuity and change. That evening, routine security review revealed expected footage. Empty house functioning normally during absence, authorized return recorded from multiple perspectives, standard activities resumed without extraordinary significance. Technology, providing appropriate information without emotional distortion or psychological over-centralization. Sleep came naturally, physical exertion from climbing expedition, creating healthy tiredness rather than emotional exhaustion or anxiety-induced insomnia. The security cameras continued their silent observation through darkened rooms, recording nothing requiring attention or intervention. Technology functioning as designed without emotional projection or psychological dependency. Morning arrived with characteristic autumn clarity, sunlight illuminating frost patterns on garden plants captured in remarkable detail by external cameras. Technology documenting natural transformation with objective precision, recording seasonal change, progressing according to ancient patterns regardless of human circumstances. A year had passed since betrayal discovery, calendar marking temporal distance, while emotional evolution followed its own complex trajectory, not linear progression from traumatic revelation to complete recovery, but cyclical movement through interconnected transformation phases, understanding, adaptation, recalibration, integration, continuation. The security cameras that had revealed life-altering deception now documented life continuing beyond that revelation, changed certainly, redirected necessarily, but persisting with fundamental integrity despite profound disruption. They recorded reality with mechanical objectivity, neither amplifying emotional significance nor minimizing authentic transformation. Technology serving human needs rather than defining human identity, tools fulfilling specific functions within appropriate contexts, systems providing useful information without becoming psychological dependency or emotional surrogate. Life happening beyond camera range, outside recorded footage, beyond monitored perimeters. Actual meaningful existence occurring in direct engagement with natural beauty and human connection, professional challenge and personal accomplishment, ordinary moments. experienced authentically rather than observed remotely. The cameras would remain, continuing their vigilant recording from multiple angles, their practical utility retained for specific purpose in proper context. But their significance had fundamentally transformed from psychological necessity to appropriate tool, technology fulfilling intended function rather than emotional barrier or identity foundation. Security redefined not as absence of vulnerability, but as presence of resilience. Protection reconceptualized not as avoidance of pain, but as capacity for authentic engagement despite inevitable uncertainty. Safety recognized not as controlled isolation, but as thoughtful navigation of unavoidable complexity. The cameras had revealed betrayal, maintained vigilance, and now witnessed recovery, not as dramatic triumph over adversity, but as quiet persistence through necessary transformation. They documented reality without interpretation, recording external changes while internal evolution proceeded according to its own essential timeline. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.